Bulletproof Radio, a state of high performance.
Hey everyone, it's Dave Asprey with Bulletproof Radio. Today's cool fact of the day is that smoking marijuana may actually increase lung capacity. Researchers examined 5,000 men and women over 20 years and looked at information about how much tobacco and marijuana they used. And at different points, they had their lung capacity measured, something called the forced expiratory volume, or FEV. And they measured the amount of air the lungs can hold, which is called forced vital capacity. And basically the speed they're able to blow out the air. They found that the people who smoked some marijuana, a moderate amount, had improved lung capacity in both FEV and FVC. Usually smokers inhale really deeply into their lungs and expand their chest, which could be an explanation for this. It's not what I would have expected, and I don't think it justifies you going out and smoking pot, although you may be doing that, and there's a case for that for sure, and a case against it. Just breathing anything burning is not particularly great for your lungs. That's why I tend to use a power lung, which is something on the Bulletproof site that lets you just exercise your lungs like you're lifting weights, kind of. And you can also put your pot, if you're going to use pot for its autoimmune properties or just recreationally, you can put it in edibles. You can eat it and not have all that burning stuff. In fact, that's our guest for today is a guy who makes a machine that does that. Garyn Angel makes the MagicalButter too, and has a way to extract that. So we're going to talk about that. But first, a brief commercial interruption. Well, actually, not really. I'm just really stoked because 3 days before recording this podcast, we launched Fat Water, which is the newest Bulletproof product. And I'm not going to fill you up with ads or anything, but I'm going to show it to you if you're watching on video. There's a little packet. These are available on the store right now. This is Bulletproof XCT oil. I'm going to tear the top off the packet. And this stuff, you just pour it in 16 ounces of water. Actually, here, I'll hold this up so you can see what I'm doing. And if you're driving in your car, well, I'll just narrate. So what I'm doing now is I'm pouring the stuff into the water. It comes out like a gel. And then I'm stirring it. And what this does is this lets me ship you something that makes your water super hydrating. And this is berry flavor, so it actually tastes really good too. But the idea is there's micro droplets of fat. And those micro droplets of fat allow the water to absorb more rapidly into the body. They stay suspended. There's no oily stuff. It's not a replacement for Bulletproof coffee. We're talking like 2 grams of fat in a whole 16-ounce bottle of it. In Los Angeles at Erewhon or at the Bulletproof coffee shop that also just opened, you can get it ready to drink, or we'll just ship you enough. If you're going to work out or you just want to have something to drink that tastes good, that makes you feel good, this is a new kind of energy beverage because your energy is coming from fat. There's no sugar at all. And now you know about it, and you're probably the first people to ever see me pour it into one of these on video. So it's kind of cool. And now I can be hydrated. So enough about that. That would be bulletproof.com/fatwater. And let's get on to the show. Garyn, welcome.
Thank you, Bob. It's great to be on your show. It's exciting. I've read all about you, and you do some very neat things.
Well, thanks, and likewise. I first heard about you because I received this crazy package in the mail. It was this big box, and it had like a bright green silicone glove on top of it, and it said MagicalButter, and it kind of looked like maybe a child's toy, the way it was. But when I looked at it, I'm like, wait, this is for making herb-infused butter, and who the heck sent this thing to me? And it was actually a different, it was the European model that had arrived, not the American model. And I'm like, I can't even plug it in. I don't know what to do with this because I'm on the American grid, even though I'm in Canada, which seems like it's part of Europe. And so then I asked around, I'm like, does anyone know what this thing is? And finally, Jackie was like, oh, Dave, yeah, that's Garyn. He's going to come on the show. So you sent me another one. And the MagicalButter is a neat like biohacker device. What this thing does for people listening is it lets you have a precise control of the temperature when you're taking any fat and putting any herb in it. So if you want to make, an oregano flavored ghee, which is something I've done, that's ridiculously good. And if you want to make, say, one of those in brain octane, you can do that. Or you could actually just add marijuana and you can put whatever oil you want. And you can do that in brain octane. You could do it in ghee. You can do it in sunflower oil if you want to eat that kind of thing. I don't recommend it. But the idea of flavored butter is culinary, but precise temperature control is actually out of laboratories. And the combination lets you make some really cool, flavorful things, but also there's some biological effects. And that's why I wanted Garyn on the show today.
Thanks for having me on. And yeah, what you're saying is very accurate. As you start to use cannabis in life and botanicals in life, it changes your body. And that's what we're going to discuss today and go through the benefits for people and how it may or may not work for them. And it's not about cannabis, it's about herbs and just eating green and eating healthy, living well, drinking water, doing the things that you have to do and taking control of your health and happiness. And it all comes as one. So, this is a great time because the freedom of the internet provides so much information that now people can go out there, do their own research, learn how to do things. And like for us, where we automated a process, right? We didn't recreate the wheel. Like there's a way that you make infusions, and we made it simple to do. So, we've had great success with it. And, really it's about push button everything. Just make it so people they're empowered. They can do what they need to do. And research and work together with open sourced medicine and people just on blogs and doing podcasts. And let's start to advance mankind by everybody collaborating together and being one team, because together we win.
There's a lot going on in the medical marijuana industry. There's the original use, which is like, you smoke it increases your appetite. And that's really good for you if you have cancer and things like that. And there's some things about chronic pain relief. But lately I've been seeing just masses about CBD oil. I have some here. I've tried various brands of it. Some actually dried my skin out and made me like kind of in pain, and others seem to work pretty well. And there's definitely a variety of quality and quantity and effects from different oils, from different things, including CBD. When someone uses the MB2 in order to make an extract of marijuana, how do you do this, and what would you do this for, both medically and recreationally? Just walk me through this, and then I want to get more about how you actually made this thing.
And I'm going to change one word there,
right.
Just recreational. It's therapeutic. Okay, because I think it's important.
Okay.
It's a different message if something's therapeutic than if it's recreational.
Well, I know a lot of people who are not therapeutic users, like they're at parties, they're smoking it. And my message there is like, look, you're probably going to do that. Like this happens in our country. People use it for partying. And if they're going to do that, using it as an edible is far healthier than smoking it.
Agree.
And so what?
Well,
right.
We can't really say that. And here's the only reason why we can't say that. Like, I watched a video about some research that's being done in England,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just in my Facebook news stream actually this morning, and they're measuring the amount of carbon monoxide after smoking a cigarette and after vaping tobacco, and there's not the increase there yet. So that's with tobacco. So let's take properties like that, because they're not testing it with cannabis yet that we know of in that same way. And let's apply that same thing to cannabis. And vaping may actually prove to be insanely medical and very therapeutic. I mean, because it's the fastest way to get cannabinoids into your bloodstream. So,
vaping's a middle ground. I totally agree with you there. And it's a very different effect than actually, rolling a doobie, which really is rough on the lungs. Like there's no getting around that. And it's not going to be a long-term health thing. And, ever since I was a teenager, let's make an apple bong, water bongs, all that crazy stuff to try and reduce the harshness because it's harsh. And so fair point about vaping, but let's say that, all right, someone is going to use an edible and they're looking to use it therapeutically. What are the effects that happen from edible, we'll call it full strength marijuana extract in oil, for lack of a more descriptive term? So if we look at that versus just purified CBD that's THC free, like what do you get when you have the fully loaded version? Like what happens in the body?
So let's go with the different molecules so that way people get it. Okay. So you'd mentioned CBD before, and that's an undeniable, incredible medicinal dietary supplement that in short order it will be standard and probably replace vitamin C as our, daily intake of what we want for a dietary supplement. So that's one thing I want to note on CBD.
That's a huge statement, replacing vitamin C. Wow.
Well, okay. Just my own.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most beneficial molecules on this planet. So how we are going to incorporate it into our daily lives is going to be mind-blowing. So for the medical community, it's very exciting, and for the therapeutic community, it's equally exciting. So let's start with CBD edibles, for example. And it could be used for a lot of different things. And with our machine, we don't just make edibles. So you could make a suppository, for example. And if you had Crohn's disease, maybe a CBD suppository would be a great way to, potentially make some of those side effects go away.
There's probably people laughing right now thinking about that, what wasn't smoking it crazy enough, but the suppository route for administering vitamins is well known, and drugs. So if that's something you've never really heard of, there are even ways of removing mercury from the body using other types of fat-based suppositories. So yeah, that's something I never thought of with CBD, but it makes sense.
So and it, I know some people think it's suppository and it becomes somewhat of a joke, but when you really have Crohn's disease, that's a lot better than having Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
So that's the way that people look at it. But now on the edible side, edibles, and so we talked about CBD on that. Now let's switch it over. So we're given an exposure to the different molecules. So THC, for example, we're going to go with THCA first, which when you find a cannabis plant, in the wild and you dry it out, it's THCA. And then over time or with heat, it decarboxylates. It's a process called decarboxylation. And it goes from THCA to THC. And both of those molecules have different properties. So, for example, THCA is a great anti-inflammatory, okay? For me, it's something that has always provided me with energy. CBD does the same for me. And these are very similar to, think of these molecules, if you will, as, different flavors of what you might drink, like iced tea or water or hot tea or coffee, right? And for everybody, they're going to have a different effect. So when I drink a cup of coffee, it does something completely different to me than it may do to someone else. And water and these molecules do the exact same thing. So especially this early in the game, there is no written rule for, hey, look, this is the definitive way you do anything. We don't understand enough about it medically because we haven't been able to research it in so long. So, but now the THC edible, you take it. As you go through your liver, it metabolizes and it becomes stronger. Okay, and it converts from delta 9 THC to 11 hydroxy THC, and that's why you'll see some stories in the news about edibles and how potent they are and how much they light people up. And if you overdo it with an edible, CBD is one of the things that can help take you back and make it so you don't have a bad experience. So the plant, as you start to use it, has ways where if you take it too far, you can also take yourself back to reality. It's a wonderful plant, and it's that's a little bit about edibles. I'll let you go for a second here and tell me what you think.
Well, it's definitely, people feel the difference from edibles versus smoking. That's pretty well established, right? It's just how it's kind of just how it is when you've used pot, and at this point, I would say probably more people in the country have used pot than not. It gets a little weird though, because there aren't that many studies, especially looking at health. I think the evidence on CBD oil is like you said, it's overwhelming at this point. And this is one of the reasons that I've been supporting legalization. There's also a lot of people who get cognitive benefits from certain strains, but not other strains of pot. And it's actually never been It's never been a drug that appealed to me. Like I've used it and don't have a problem talking about the fact that I've used it, but it's not something that makes me nearly as happy as coffee, let's say. But hey, that might have been easy to predict. However, the idea that you might use it occasionally with THC and all of its effects and get therapeutic benefits or meditative benefits, or some of these like full-on anti-aging benefits, it's intriguing, and it seems likely that there's an effect there, just because of CBD, if nothing else, and probably because of some of the THC anti-inflammatory stuff. Do you see that there's going to be enough medical funding for this stuff, or is this going to sort of continue? Like, we've got legalization in a couple states. Like, are we going to actually put some money into understanding what this does the way we have for, say, caffeine? Or is this going to be like an orphan thing for another 20 years? I'm really curious. It's like the birth of a new industry.
I want to come back to that one because I want to talk about your passion first.
Okay.
And here's why. It's because I think there's something between coffee and cannabis. And I know I've seen you publish a few things. And I'm going to go a little step further than that.
Cool.
What we know is that people have endocannabinoid systems, okay? And you have CB1 and CB2 receptors. And that we also know that these molecules, the cannabinoids, the THC, the CBD, they're effective at making different stimulants significantly more potent. So, for example, cannabis makes alcohol more potent, right? Cannabis makes OxyContin more potent. And we can look at that as a negative or a positive, right? We can say, well, we can cut somebody's dosage of oxy in half, right? By using cannabis with that. What I'm going to say now is with coffee, okay? Coffee is a stimulant, all right? So these molecules, your body, and I'm not saying this is scientifically proven, but I'm saying I believe this will be scientifically proven shortly. And we're just talking right now about what's going on and what I've seen on my background, but I can't say that based on, where we're at in society nowadays. So I think in time, it's going to be that coffee is actually increased, your caffeine intake and the benefits of coffee are increased when they're combined with certain molecules from the cannabis plant.
There's no doubt that there is synergy between different herbs, and end of the day, both pot and coffee and oregano and turmeric, all of these things have biological effects, and they actually can amplify each other. But it's funny, when Stephen Kotler, the guy who wrote Rise of Superman, came on Bulletproof Radio, he and Jamie Wheal are starting the Flow Genome Project, and I'm one of their financial backers, because they're taking apart all of the things required to put humans in a flow state. And Stephen and I were talking about it, and he's like, look, Dave, there's a reason that every ski town smells like espresso, nicotine, and pot. Because all three of those things help you get different neurotransmitters positioned so that you can actually be in a flow state. And when you combine that with near-death skiing down hills at ridiculous speeds, that you've really got like 4 of the 5 things you need to go into a flow state. And he's like, that's why the stereotypical extreme athlete has this mix of weird chemicals around, because it's making it a lot easier for them to do these things that are otherwise biologically difficult. I definitely think you're onto something there. And even in the Bulletproof Coffee Shop, Bulletproof Coffee is a substrate, but we have this thing called Headstrong, where we add some specific herbs for cognitive function because of the synergies. So I don't think I've ever seen a study of the coffee pot synergy. Have you ever seen one?
I've talked to, in this industry, it's not so much about the medical research, it's about open source medicine. And it's by talking to enough people, after you've heard the same thing around the world from people who aren't connected, that's how I do my research. And so that's what I've heard from the field, if you will, of users of both stimulants out there. And I believe when you ask the audience, usually the answer comes back correct.
So if someone was to buy a good quality strain and toss it in the MagicalButter machine with some butter, and make an extract, how do they control the dose?
And you control your plant. Okay, the machine's microprocessor controlled. So what it is that makes us unique is our user interface. It's simple. We provide ways for the average person to just know how to do this. And when you're making it with our machine, and I'm not plugging my machine here, I'm just telling you, why I'm passionate about what we do.
It's called the MagicalButter too. There, I plugged it for you.
But it's microprocessor controlled. So if you select your temperature and you select your time, the microprocessor is going to run the same program. And so if your plant matter is consistent and your ingredients are consistent, your end result should be consistent. And unfortunately, nowadays, there's not testing facilities all over the country where, the average person can just either afford to go do it. Like in states like Colorado, it's $40, $50 a test. So the average person is not going to go test everything. And then in places like Florida or, most other states, there is no testing available. So you have to provide some way for people at home to have a way to do this. And that's what we do.
So now, if I made an extract tomorrow, I live in a part of the world where some of the world's best marijuana grows.
I love
it. They call it BC Bud. And so
beautiful.
If I was to do that, now I've got this extract and I have no idea how much to take. Like, what's going to happen if I take too much?
You're going to feel terrible. It's going to be similar to if you've had too much tequila or too much of anything. Really, any stimulant that you do to an extreme gives you a very bad side effect. And the ones that are grass, right, the generally regarded as safe stimulants that we would consider, which are, nicotine and tobacco and caffeine and cannabis, when you overdo those, it's a terrible feeling. So, and that's why they're generally regarded as safe, is because they're self-moderating. Like, you're going to do that once or twice in your life, and then you're going to say, I don't ever want to take it to that extreme again. That wasn't fun for me.
It's kind of funny. One of the people on the Bulletproof team was chatting with me, and I said, there are nicotine receptors in the brain, and you can use nicotine as a smart drug. And you start out with very small amounts. You don't use it every day, so there's no getting hooked. And especially for something like jet lag, or you can do half of the tiniest lozenge, or you can do a little skin patch for a couple hours. And like, nicotine really, really can help your brain as a smart drug, not as an addictive smoking thing. Like, they're just unrelated. It affects oxygen levels in the brain. Like, it's a unique molecule. But she took I won't name her because, well, she's probably listening to this right now and would blush. But she took a 25 milligram, the largest patch you can get for smoking cessation, and she put it on her arm. And she's like, oh my God, I feel great. And an hour later, she's literally green and just about throwing up. Like, nicotine's an incredibly toxic poison at high doses. And if a dog eats one of those patches, it'll kill the dog. So that was one of those things where it's self-limiting, because you turn green and you want to throw up, and like, this is the worst day of my life. And having overdosed on marijuana one time and sleeping for 24 hours afterwards and having all sorts of really, really bad effects, I'm pretty cautious about this overall sort of things. Like, it's not on my plate of, this is something I use regularly. But I recognize that CBD and some extracts probably will be things that I use regularly, just for the polyphenol content and some of the other things. And I'm a little concerned that if someone gets a MagicalButter machine and they're like, I'm gonna make really good butter, and they're gonna cram the whatever good stuff they can find in there and make the highest concentrate possible, that it's pretty tough to control dose on something like that, because it's an extract versus if you're just tossing it in the blender and making a pesto or something that tastes bad. It's a different animal. How do you recommend people start experimenting with the therapeutic effects of this stuff in extract? Like, do you just take one drop? Do you just take a teaspoon? Like, how would you know?
You start at where your comfort level is, and there really is no magic number.
Okay.
If you've never had any experience with any kind of stimulants, you probably want to go super, super slow. Like, start with a nibble of a cookie and see what happens. And day 2, take a second nibble of a cookie and just see. And if there's ever a day where you're like, I didn't like that, well, then you went too far. And I'm not trying to say it any other way than that, but it's not a dangerous, like when I hear the word overdose in cannabis, it's a scary thing to me because
Fair point.
we've associated those two for so long that, that's really what's held it up. And we think of cannabis when we're talking, like our entire discussion at this point, for the average person, they're thinking of the person that is our age, right? Like that's what we're thinking of. Okay, when we're talking about medical marijuana or medical cannabis, right? What I think of is children. I think of veterans who are getting opiates and instead of for PTSD instead of cannabis for PTSD. And so my brain just takes this a completely different way. Like for me, I think if I had a problem, I would start with medicine that we've been using for thousands of years and see if it worked. And then I'd go to something else that we've been doing for 70 or 80 years. And I know that's a crazy way to think, but this way is kind of crazy too, because I don't like the direction that we're headed with our healthcare industry. So there has to be something that's better. And so far in the states that this has worked in, the statistics show that this is a great thing for the most part. Yes, there's some negatives, but most of it's all wonderful. And we're creating industry. It's a new enterprise, and it's probably the best investment opportunity that any of us will ever have in our lifetimes.
There are definitely huge amounts of money being made, at least if you can put it in a bank account where there's still that little problem.
That's cleared up mostly.
Good. That's good.
But most of the way cleared up.
Good. It's amazing how banks want money no matter where it comes from. Shocking that way. So now, one of the other reasons I wanted to have you on the show is that you're actually an investment banker by background. Like you're not the stereotypical pot entrepreneur. You've had a variety of success. What made you go from kind of a more traditional background into I'm making this like crazy brand where I wear a bright green wig and kind of a funny campy thing, but one that's been really successful? Like what happened?
Really, I like to live my life, and I've worked for other people, never, but I have. I've always been in the service industry, whether it was managing money or, as when I had my computer company, it was just, I was always servicing people, and that was what I did. And I dressed the way that I had to dress, and I did what I had to do. And I just wasn't able to be me, right? And I don't care that I wear a green wig. I think it's fun. And I was a school mascot for USF, the University of South Florida. I don't know. I've always kind of walked to my own beat. So when I had the opportunity, to do a few things, which was employ people, all right, help people, and make money, that's when I said, this is my opportunity. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a rock star. I couldn't sing. Well, I think I'm a rock star business entrepreneur in the cannabis industry, and I'm doing everything I want to do. I travel, I meet awesome people. I'm learning from the most educated individuals in the world on what I think the future of a lot of industry is. And when you look at the opportunities that are provided by cannabis and just get past, the fact that it's not about us, it's about helping others. Once you get to that point, both as an entrepreneur, because that's important to be there, for the health of the industry, and also as a regular, everyday United States citizen. Because what's starting to happen is we're falling behind to other countries. And it's because our views are still jaded from propaganda, because we are the most media-driven place in the world. So when you really look at how it's went down, the faster that people just educate themselves about cannabidiol, don't even consider THC at this point. And just like with anything with cannabis, take it slow and see if, just like with alcohol, just like you should have done when you were 21, but you didn't do, that's what you should do with cannabis, right? Learn your lesson from when you were 21 and you went and you got shit-faced for the first 4 days after you turned 21, and it really hurt you, and then you did that until you were 30, and then you realize, like, if I keep doing this, I'm going to kill myself. And so you start to slow down and become more responsible, and just act like you're 30 when you try cannabis as an edible.
That makes good sense, and I think that's an important point. What do you think about like a 14-year-old using CannabisButter?
We have a lot of customers who are young, and we 100% support it. These kids are on Onfi and Oxy and just absolutely horrific drugs for a 14-year-old system. So, whatever it is to balance your ecosystem, you do. And I think the laws make absolutely no sense. And it's frustrating to watch parents and children suffer in the mental anguish and the arrests and everything else when they can give them an Oxycontin or, shoot basically synthetic cocaine up their nose. But, they can't make cannabis butter in their own kitchen. Like, that just doesn't, I'm on the other side of that fence.
So that's a really controversial thing. You're saying, yeah, I'm fine with, relatively young teenagers using this stuff. But your point there that says, like, we literally have a substantial number of teenagers on prescription methamphetamine. It literally says D-amphetamine salts on the label of the of Adderall, the generic Adderall. And so I would argue, just like you, that if that's okay under a doctor's care, that if there is a clinical effectiveness for using marijuana in any of its forms, that would probably be at least less harmful than meth and some of these other pretty aggressive drugs that cause permanent changes in the brain. So I think that an enlightened perspective on this for our entire country would be, look, there's lots of chemicals, and different chemicals do different things to different people, and people have a right to control their own biochemistry. So stop legislating this commercial drug is different than this natural drug or this natural compound, whatever you want to call it. So if basically people would let open source science work, I think we'd find there were a lot of people who benefit. In the case of teenagers, one of the things that THC itself does is it raises alpha brainwaves. And I do a lot of brain training to raise alpha brainwaves. And pot interferes with the training. But if you're not doing the training and you use pot, it elevates alpha brainwaves. And if that's the only way you know of to do that, if you're completely freaking out and you have all this stress and anxiety and things that are tied in with something like ADD, and you can use THC to help regulate your brain, you're self-medicating, and it's not impacting your ability to function as a human being, which it does for some people, the stereotypical pothead, well, then there's a great case for doing it, and it would actually be a disservice to yourself and just to whatever you owe the world if you're not taking control of your own biochemistry via whatever tools are available and work for you. So I'm with you there, Garyn.
Yeah, I guess the real question for somebody who isn't with you on it is, are you okay with an Oxycontin being prescribed to a 14-year-old?
Yeah, that's the problem.
And that's a real strong reason why I'm okay with medical cannabis being prescribed to a 14-year-old, because I'd rather have my child on medical cannabis than Oxycontin. And so you vote in your brain on most subjects, and my vote says, if it were my child, right, knowing what I know about the body and your ecosystem, I want to be on this side of it. And so that's really back to the original question of why I wear a green wig and a green butter stick and am as loud and well-mannered at the same token, but about what this is, because at the end of it, that's the message, is our kids right now are being prescribed. What's the percentage of kids on Adderall? It's absurd.
It's like 12% or something. It's don't quote me on that, but it's so big that when I see it, it just kind of makes me sad, because you can address that naturally for most of them, and for some of them, it changes their life. And like I recognize that, but the overprescription of it is.
But let's go to that one right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for some of them, it changes their life, right? Well, we can acknowledge that at least CBD,
Of
right?
course.
Right, is something that could change somebody's life, right? But yet they don't have that. But 12%, and like it's so for me, like I just I've seen when lives get changed, and I've seen enough lives get changed now that there's only one way that this goes down in history, and I know I'm on the right side of it. So, you wear a green wig and a green butter stick, and you do what you have to do to get people to listen to you. And maybe one day people will eat green butter and they'll get healthier.
Well, that being said, I think that there's a case to be made for making our kids so that their social environment and their brains and even just their physical environment help them not need any pharmaceutical enhancement in order to function. Like there's something wrong in either case if a child doesn't function in society without some of these modifications. And I'm all in support of changing ourselves to fit our environment when required, but I'm also a fan of doing whatever you need to do in the womb, doing whatever you need to do in the early years of childhood to make healthy, resilient children who don't have an attraction to pot. They'll try it and say, "Hey, it didn't do anything for me. Like I like the way things are," and go on with life. That's optimal, but it's hard to do.
I agree with you. And I don't want the entire world on cannabis. What I want is the people who think it might be beneficial to them to have fair access. And that's where I stand on the issue. And unfortunately, some people get offended by that along the way. But I'm sure there's something that they do in their life that offends someone else. So like at some point, it's not about political correctness. It's about fair access for people, because no one is ever going to be happy with the way it goes. So, let's just give the people all the access now. We know it's generally regarded as safe. Nobody's ever overdosed on it. So just make it 1,000% fully legal and scale it back as you need to.
You're talking about CBD? Or
I'm talking about just cannabis.
Okay.
It's a plant. I'm talking about hemp.
Sure.
The whole bucket of it.
It's ridiculous that it's illegal, and at this point, just about any thinking rational human, I think, could recognize just the decimation that it's caused in our environment, in our prison system, in our society by making it illegal. Like prohibition didn't work, and it still doesn't work, no matter what you're prohibiting. But I have a hard question for you. So
yeah,
I have two kids, 5 and 8, and they drink Bulletproof coffee, and some people are like horrified. Because, oh my God, you give your kids coffee? I'm like, yeah, they metabolize it twice as fast as adults do, and they get a couple ounces. I want them to get the fats in there, and I actually think it's good that they get some polyphenols, and it makes them feel good, and it's a small amount of caffeine. It's not enough to affect them cognitively. And if I give them an adult-sized cup, it is, and they don't really like it. But I don't have any problem with that, and it actually improves their mood stability to have that brain octane oil in there. So I'm okay with that. And I've received some criticism from people saying, "How dare you give your kids coffee?" I'm like, okay, there's nothing wrong with this. You have 2 kids as well, but you're dealing with another biological compound. What do you do about that? Like, what do you do when your kids come up and say, "Daddy, what is this green butter?"
I mean, that's not how we approach it in our house.
Okay. How do you do that?
We approach it pretty real. I mean, my kids are around the kids a lot. My kids travel with me on the road, so they're in Denver and they see the people whose 2-year-old child has brain cancer, and a lot of these families come and they vacation at our house. And so I guess it's just about how you look at it. And like from my world, it's the best choice for a lot of these parents, and that's as real as it gets. If there was a better choice for those parents, then that's what they should be doing.
What I'm asking isn't those parents. I'm asking about you as a parent. Like, what do you do?
I kind of stay away from this topic.
Sorry.
Just because it's
It's controversial. I get it.
It's my kids have never been exposed to any cannabinoid molecules. I would like to start using CBD oil on my son's feet. We've acquired some IP for what I believe to be a pretty incredible cream. And, I think it would be beneficial for his feet. Before I do it, I live in Florida. So when I'm in Florida, I can't use it without first asking my doctor and making sure that, I can get a medical necessity permit for a CBD molecule to rub on my son's foot. And then I wouldn't have to worry about Child Protective Services maybe coming in and taking my child from me because I was using hemp oil on my son's foot, basically, and that's really what it comes down to. It's, you have to be careful and don't do things that are illegal or are going to risk having your children taken away. And it's an impossible situation. Like there's no good answer except for packing up and moving. And that's rarely a good solution because then you take people who have a bad medical support system or a good medical support system with their own immediate families, and then you move them to a new state where they have nobody around them to help them, but they just have access to cannabis. Like there's no good answer.
Well, I hopefully will be able to say that this is legal in more states, and hopefully as it becomes legal, the cost of it will come down. And it'll become one of those things that is in the arsenal of biological things that affect our biology that a physician or a nutritionist or anyone else can say, that's worth a try. The harm is low. Give it a shot. And in the case of CBD oil, like there really isn't a good argument for saying, oh God, it should be regulated. I can't see that any more than regulating any other spice. And in the case of the psychoactive compounds, I also agree if they're providing therapeutic benefit, then they're providing therapeutic benefit, and that's what it's all about. So thanks for answering that relatively tough question, because there are a lot of parents, and the biggest criticism of this podcast, I'm certain, is going to be, we're promoting that kids should be on pot, and what I'm saying is different than that, and what you're saying is different than that as well.
Yeah, and it's just, if you don't say it the real way, it will always be perceived the wrong way. And that's just where we're at in society. So, what we're doing right now is we're exposing our children to it the way that I think it's real, and not where they're consuming it, but not where they shame it either, because it's someone's medicine. It's not. There's beer commercials on all day, every day, getting our kids riled up about, the business guy walking down the street turning to a surfboard, and then that's the horses kicking footballs, and this is what our kids are exposed to every day. The President of the United States has said cannabis is safer than alcohol. Most medical professions will tell you that cannabis is safer than alcohol. So when you really just look at it, that cannabis is safer than alcohol, well, if we already know that, we haven't been able to study it for 80 years, and we knew it was medicine for a couple thousand, why couldn't we, start to study it and just go ahead and go the opposite way with it? Because what we've done with it has not worked. It's been as bad as you could manage the cannabis drug policy in this country. It's been done. When this history runs out, that's what it is. And it's a difficult thing. And it's not that I want everyone to go smoke cannabis, but it's that I want everyone to be educated that cannabis is a plant, and there's different parts of the plant, and some parts of the plant, even though you're stubborn about it, might be beneficial to you or one of your family members. So, start to look at the world instead of like this, get a little enlightened, open your eyes up, read, and start to see if, hey, look, my so-and-so has this. Well, they're on Oxycontin. Why don't they try this? And start to make a shift. I love your perfect world scenario where nobody's on, any kind of pharmaceuticals, and everyone's got their head straight naturally from the beginning, or that they use coffee. I just know that worldwide, coffee is drank and cannabis is consumed. So, it's real to think that cannabis is going to be a part of this world in the very near future for the rest of history, just as alcohol will, and alcohol consumption may decline, much like tobacco consumption declined. But these are things we have to have in our society, and we're big boys and girls, and let's parent our children and teach them right from wrong, and don't smoke cannabis in front of your 2-year-old if that's not what you want your kid's memory of you to be. If that is what you want your kid's memory of you to be, then do it, because you're raising your children, and I'm raising mine, and mine are seeing it where it's an integral part of helping people medically, and then the cool part is that they get to see us go around the country and work with these families and do all kinds of fun stuff with them. And so, together, this has been just the greatest thing personally. Like, I'm much like you said, you've got your kids as part of your coffee, in the morning. And it's so they're a part of you because that's what you want them to remember you by, right? Because this is what you think your legacy is. And I think that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, but I don't want mine to be, and not in a bad way. I enjoy bong rips. I'm not going to tell you I don't. But, but that's not really what I want my kids to see. So that's not how I present myself. And, that's, if I'm hanging out with my buddies and if somebody breaks out something fun, hey, look, that's therapeutic to me. Okay. I could drink a beer. I could do a shot of tequila. I could do I could have a coffee, whatever it is. Like, I kind of want everyone to find their happy place in life.
Well, that makes sense, and it's throughout human history, finding our happy place has often included external substances, and that's kind of just how it is, and that's part of being human. And even a lot of the foods that we eat have biological effects on your brain. They change how you feel. So it's very tough to draw the line that says, well, I had turmeric, which tasted good, but it also turned off inflammation in my brain, which made things different. Like, okay, was that a food or was it a drug? Who knows? But we modulate our experience by what we put in our bodies, and that ain't going to change.
Agreed.
Now, there's a question that I ask everyone who's been on the show, and aside from what we just talked about, you're a pretty high-performance entrepreneur. Like, you've had multiple successes. You're doing really well. And so I want to ask you the question that I ask all the guests at the end of the show, and it's, given all the stuff and the stuff you've been through, not just as an entrepreneur, but just in life, what are your top 3 recommendations for people who want to perform better at everything? Like, if you want to kick ass at life, these 3 things are the most important. What are they?
Wake up and smile. Always wake up and smile. Scream, I'm a winner every night before bed. Okay? And the third one, the easiest way to help yourself is to help someone else.
Excellent. Yeah, that service to others one comes up a reasonable amount of the time, and it's really meaningful when you realize that that's what you're doing. It's more motivating than just about anything else I know of. So, well, Garyn Angel, where can people find out more about you and about Magical Butter? Give us your coordinates.
MagicalButter.com. We have a great Facebook page. We got about 190,000 Facebook followers now. We have the Magical Butter Users United group, which is about 9,000 of our customers that are all on there sharing their recipes and working together. It's a beautiful community. We support it. Myself, I'm on Facebook. I keep an open profile. So, I'm also on Twitter, and it's always just Garyn Angel. So, cheers to goodness, guys. It was a great time, and I really appreciate it. Let's do this again. If we're ever in the same town, let's try to hook up for dinner or something. I'd like to meet you in person.
That'd be awesome. I'd like to meet you too. So we'll arrange to do that. I think we both travel a good amount, so we'll hook up. Thanks again for being on Bulletproof Radio.
Thank you, Ben. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, you know what to do. Head on out there, check out the stuff we talked about, get educated about it. While you're at it, pick up a Magical Butter machine if you want to make some delicious herbal extracts, not just marijuana, by the way. You can actually go out and use this as a culinary thing, and I've been playing around with just doing flavored butters. In fact, some of the Bulletproof Coffee Shop recipes, we have these flavored butter sauces where we're doing herbal extracts in fat because it changes the way your food tastes. It's kind of cool. So as a kitchen hacker, you can use this for more than just cannabis, and that's kind of cool. And if you're looking for some recipes, check out the Bulletproof Diet. There's some good stuff in there. You can pick that up on Amazon, or I'm happy to sell it to you on bulletproof.com along with your monthly Bulletproof coffee pack. Have an awesome day.